Hi, AP Stats students. Welcome to our Unit 1 review that is online. I miss you all, and I hope you guys are all staying safe and healthy. Let's get going. So the goal for the day in this video is I want to go through this Unit 1 Key Concepts one-pager, which I will post on Schoology. After I go through that, I'm going to pause the video. At that time, I would like you to go onto the My AP Classroom. On My AP Classroom, I want you to try 3 free response problems that I've posted. If you struggle with them at all, come back to this video because at the end of this video, I'm going to have hints for those questions. Once you're finished with that, if you have any questions at all about either this video or questions that you didn't understand regarding those free response questions, post them on the discussion that I have on Schoology. Lastly, look for tomorrow. I'm going to have a note card review called Note Card Review Unit 1 with Mrs. Opal. So that will be your video that you need to watch tomorrow. I'm going to try to post a video every day, every other day. We'll kind of see, we'll be flexible with it and just kind of see what you guys need. So let's get going with Unit 1, our Unit 1 key concepts. The first thing I want to focus on is I want to focus on the normal distribution, okay? First thing we know about the 68, 95, 99.7 rule is with all normal distributions, okay? So let's play pretend. Let's play pretend that we have a test, okay? And that test, the average score, that center right there, let's say is 70, okay? And the standard deviation is 10. So what that means then is 68% of the population taking that test. If it's 70 with a standard deviation of 10, that means 68% of people will get between 60, right, and 80. Why? Because we said that standard deviation was, that mean was 70 with a standard deviation of 10. So that would make this 60, right? And that would make this one 80. 68% of people would be in that region, okay? 95% of the population would be within 2 standard deviations, okay? So if this right here is 70, that's 60, 50, right? Because our standard deviation is 10, 60, 70, 80, okay? So that means 95% of our population would be between 50 and 80, okay? And then 99.7% of people would be within 3 standard deviations of the mean. So if we have 70 here, so that's 60, 50, 40, right? 70, 80, 70, 80, 90, 100, okay? So 99.7% of people would be within these scores. So I can't tell you what's going to be on the free response portion of the test. What I can tell you is sometimes they do ask, is something normal? And using this model can help you. And I'll try to find another free response problem. I think we did do one. It was a football player problem one. And it was talking about how fast the football player runs. And it gives you an average. And then it gave you a minimum time. And we saw that that minimum time was like negative 1.7 standard deviations below the mean. Well, if something's normal, the minimum time should be about 3 standard deviations below the mean when we're talking about a minimum, right? Okay, if you have any questions at this time or something doesn't make sense, pause the video, write it down, and so you can post it on the discussion page of Schoology. Let's keep talking. Let's say, what if that student, okay, so we know we have a 70 here, right? We know we have a standard deviation of 10. So if a student had an 85 on the test, that person's right there. What we could do is we could find the Z-score, okay? And we could go to table A and we could figure out what proportion of scores are below him, okay? Make sure you understand that. Make sure, like I always like to say, become one with that formula sheet. Okay, so the normal distribution, when you are asked what proportion, what percent, what fraction, for example, what proportion of people scored below an 85 on the test, you can draw the curve like I've mentioned all the time before, okay? You shade which way it goes. You find the Z-score, the ZOMs. Your Z-score is equal to your observation. So in the story that I'm telling, that would be 85 minus the mean, the standard deviation. Minus the mean, 70, divided by the standard deviation of 10, okay? Then you go to your table A. So I have table A pulled up here. You go to that Z-score and you find that proportion right there. Now just remember to keep in mind, okay, give me a second, that is it a less than problem? If it's less than, you just stop, you're done. If it's a greater than problem, you need to subtract from 1. And if it's in between, you're going to have two z-scores, right? And then you're going to go to the table twice, and you're going to subtract the big proportion, and then from the, excuse me, you're going to do the big proportion minus the small proportion. Now, sometimes you will have a problem like this in what I assigned today, where you have to find a z-score and find the proportion. You will also have a z in reverse, okay? So that would be like what proportion, that would be like what score would you need to be in the 90th percentile? So in that case, you have to go back to your table. You have to find 0.90. Okay, so the closest one to 0.90 is 0.8997. You find the z-score that goes with it, 1.28, excuse me. So 90th percentile is right here. Pushing my son away. 1.28. And then you put it into that Zahm's formula and solve for that observation. Now, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have no idea what she's talking about, that's totally okay. But that's your job to write it down. And then I can make a more specific video for you. So this is going to take a lot of self-reflection on your part. This is going to take you to say, okay, she's talking about this stuff and I don't know. This video is not meant to teach you everything or reteach you everything. It's to remind you of things. And what your job is to write it down and put it in the discussion, and I can make a more specific video for you if needed. All right, let's keep talking about this sheet here. Hi, buddy. Anders wants to say hi, and then I'm going to kick him out.
Okay.
Okay. All right, time for me to keep going. Love you, buddy. Okay, next let's talk about a distribution, okay? A distribution when we need to use socks. So you should be able to look at these three distributions here, 1, 2, and 3, and you should be able to describe those distributions. So anytime they ask you to describe a distribution, you're going to use socks. What does socks stand for again? The shape, outliers, center, and spread, okay? So here we have a pretty symmetric distribution. Again, a pretty symmetric distribution, but here the distribution is skewed to the right. And why is it skewed to the right? Because we have that tail or that thinner part on the right-hand side. Here we have a box plot. My median's right here, and you can see we have a tail here on the left-hand side. So that one's skewed to the left. O stands for outliers. Is there anything like hanging way far away? I don't consider this an outlier. It's not super far out. It should be way over here. I just consider there a gap right there, but no outlier. Okay. How do I confirm if there's an outlier? You need to confirm if there's an outlier using this outlier rule. And that is something you do need to memorize. Okay. Let's see, where were we? The center and then the spread. Now, one thing when you're taking a histogram and you want to figure out the center, the median, what you can take is you can take the number of observations that you have. So for example, if there was 33 observations here, or let's use a better number. 33 is kind of a bad number. Let's use 21 or 20. Let's use 20. Third time's a charm, right? Let's pretend there's 20 observations here. What we're going to do is you would say 20 plus 1 is 21, then divide by 2. So 21 divided by 2 is 10.5. So you would go, I need to pause 1 second. Okay. I just had to send my kids out of the kitchen. They're watching me make the video and it's a little bit distracting. So forgive me if I repeat myself. One thing that you have to have memorized is the outlier rule. Okay. Let's keep going. So the center. Oh, that's where I was. We take our center, right? And we were saying if there's 20 observations. So you take 21 then, because you add, and then you divide by 2. So 10.5. The 10.5 observation then is where that median would be, okay? So what does a 10.5 observation mean? That 10.5 observation means it's between 10 and 11, okay? So you would go and you'd find that observation, and I'll give you a practice problem on that for your response as well, making sure that you can estimate where that median is. So how do I find the median of a histogram? You take the number of observations, add 1, and then divide by 2. And that observation is going to be the middle observation, your median. So you would say the median somewhere between 20 and 21 or wherever, what bar it's in. Again, check the free response problem. You'll know more what I'm talking about. And if you still have questions, put it on that discussion. Okay, and then finally the spread. The spread, you want to use the standard deviation or the IQR. Now, if you're just given a graph right here, I wouldn't expect you with AP exam, if they just want a quick description, you could just talk about the range here. You don't have to calculate the standard deviation or the IQR. But I would expect on a box plot, you can tell me what the IQR is here for the spread. So you can find that quartile 3, so that's this bar right here. And you can find quartile 1, that's this bar right there. And you subtract quartile 3 minus quartile 1, and that gives you your IQR for that spread. So quick summary, shape, outliers, center, spread. How do I find that median? If I had 20 observations, 20 plus one more, 21, 21 divided by 2 is 10.5. So you would count the quantities, right? So if there's one observation here, 3 observations here, that's 4 total. You'd go all the way until you get the 10.5. So that's between 10 and 11th observation. And that bar is where that median is going to be. Practice on your homework today. And then finally the spread. And we talked about the spread being the IQR, right? Or the standard deviation. If they don't give you the standard deviation and just a dot plot, you do the max minus the min. Okay, next I want to talk about comparing. It is very plausible. It's been on several released exams where you have to compare 2 distributions. So 2 box plots here. And when you compare those 2 distributions, what the College Board is looking for is they're looking for SOCs. And they're also looking for comparison words. So for example, here, when I'm comparing the centers, the medians, I would just say the distribution of, let me rewind. The median of distribution A is less than the median of distribution B. That would count for my center. I use the word less than. The spread, I'm going to use my IQR. I'm going to take quartile 3 minus quartile 1, quartile 3 minus quartile 1, and I don't even have to compute it. I just have to say the IQR of distribution B is larger than the IQR of distribution A. Now, if you can't eyeball that, you go ahead and calculate that. However, you don't need to. You just need to talk about it in terms of that IQR and which one's bigger or smaller. Lastly, let's talk about how do we know if something is symmetric versus skewed right versus skewed left if you're not given a graph. You want to look at the mean versus the median. So anytime we have a symmetric graph, the mean is going to be approximately equal to the median. Anytime we have a skewed distribution, so it's skewed to the right, our mean is going to chase that tail because it's affected by outliers, okay? So you would say that the mean is greater than the median. If anything is skewed to the left, like it is right here, again, the mean chases the extreme observations, the tail. So here you would say the mean is less than the median. That's something that does have to be memorized, okay? All right, I covered everything on the one-pager. If something comes up, let me know. At this point, I want you to go and I want you to try your 3 free response problems that I put on the my AP Classroom. If you need help, I'm going to have a little hints portion right after this. Okay, so we're at the 13-minute mark. Just make sure you come back to this mark and I'll give you those hints. Take care, guys. Okay, guys, for the charity fund, if you need some help with that one, with that free response problem, the first part of the question is getting do you know how to just find a probability distribution? So I believe there's a spinner, right? So you go on each outcome, and then you need to figure out the probability based off that spinner of each outcome. Any further questions on that, you're going to have to ask me through that discussion, or you can also send me a private message, okay? The expected value one is number 2. So if you've forgotten how to find expected value is another way to say the mean of a probability distribution. And that's where you need to look at your formula sheet. Like I say, you always need to become one with that formula sheet. And you go to this part of the formula sheet right here, and you see that E of X. So let me just remind you how to find the expected value. You do have to show your work, okay? So you take the observation, that's that xi, times the probability of the observation, okay? Sum means then you take the next observation times the probability of that observation, and you continue it until you have your expected value. So you multiply the observation times the probability of that observation for each observation and then add them all up. So add those products up, okay? That's your expected value. Again, make sure you show your work on that. And then let's see. And then number 3, the normal distribution, that's where you're going to take ZOMs. Okay, so you're going to find a Z-score. You're going to go to your formula sheet, and then you're going to comment based on that probability, that p-value that you find. The next one is about caffeine, and the security on that is a teacher use only. So I don't want to post anything on YouTube on it because I said that I would only talk about it through the use of AP Classroom. So you're going to have to try that one on your own. I will say it's getting at just like graphing, describing, and talking about the effects of outliers. Okay. So that's, I'm not telling too much. I'm not giving you any answers away. The west versus east problem, the big one there that you need to remember is just how do you find that median in a histogram? You take those number of observations, you add 1 and then divide by 2, and that will help you as well. Okay, that should be it for hints on those. Any other questions, just let me know. And then I'll see you guys tomorrow for a little flashcards session, as well as some hints on your homework for that day as well. I hope you guys are well. 16 minutes. I'll try to make it shorter next time. You guys take care, and I miss you all so much. Bye.